Hi everyone, welcome to the Bio Edge.
In biological terms, Australia is almost synonymous with eucalyptus. Because of all the plants of Australia, eucalyptus is perhaps the best known and perhaps the most successful overseas. Eucalyptus not only covers large parts of Australia, but it has various other distinctions. It's an extremely successful plantation genus of trees because it grows extremely fast and produces remarkably dense wood. It's not a softwood, it's a hardwood, but grows at the rate of softwood plantations. And so it's taken over much of the world in terms of plantations. And it also contains, surprisingly enough, the tallest of all plants, which is Eucalyptus regnans, the mountain ash, which is certainly recorded as being taller than any coniferous tree, including redwoods. Perhaps the reason why this is not better known is that the tallest individuals of the mountain ash have all gone, they've all been chopped down. But that species is still abundant in slightly lower form. And we do know from early records that this tree can reach about 120 meters high. And so whichever way you look at the genus Eucalyptus, it's remarkable. It's one of the most remarkable genera of trees. And what's perhaps most remarkable of all about Eucalyptus is that it does not have morphological or ecological counterparts on the other two southern continents, namely Southern Africa and South America. You'd think that a plant as wildly successful, as widely dominant, as ecologically prominent as eucalyptus in Australia would have some kind of convergent counterpart across the vast and varied ecological landscapes of the sister continents that shared an origin in Gondwana. But such is not the case. South America is puzzling enough because there are many members of that same family, the Myrtaceae, in South America, but nothing even vaguely like a eucalypt. When we come to Southern Africa, again, there are some tantalizing elements in that same family, the Myrtaceae, present in Southern Africa, but nothing that really could be called a eucalypt counterpart. And bear in mind that in the southernmost parts of Australia, eucalypts themselves vary enormously in growth form from multi-stemmed plants only about a meter high that live inconspicuously in mainly heathland vegetation and suffer frequent fire, through to these 120-meter high forest trees that we've just mentioned in the form of mountain ash, Eucalyptus regnans in Tasmania and southern Victoria. So eucalyptus isn't one thing. It's not just a forest or woodland tree. It ranges all the way from a fairly low shrub, certainly a multi-stemmed shrub, through to extremely tall pyrophilic trees that grow in cohorts and then die catastrophically in wildfire. So it's a whole lot of different things, but always with a certain consistency in the flower form, in the fruit form, and in the foliage form. So eucalyptus is extremely consistent in some ways, extremely varied in other ways, and somewhere within that great hyperspace of adaptive variation, you'd expect some plant in a place like Southern Africa, which is extremely rich floristically, to converge to some extent with eucalypts. But in the experience of Anthony Mills and myself, who have spent years looking in Southern Africa for some kind of eucalypt-like plant, the closest we've ever found is a species of syzygium, also in the family Myrtaceae, that is vaguely eucalypt-like in terms of its overall appearance, but still differs fairly radically because it has succulent fruits and not the eucalypt-like capsules that are consistent across the more than 500 species of eucalypt. So if asked, why is there this enormous intercontinental difference with no ecological or morphological counterpart for eucalypts in Southern Africa? how would most biologists answer? Well, in our experience, the answer is usually, well, it's just really an accident. It's an accident of the evolutionary histories of the two continents that goes against another pattern that's held dearly by most biologists, and that is that, you know, the shared derivation of the southern continents from Gondwana explains so many similarities between these continents. So we have a kind of a split mind in the sense that we like to believe that where there are similarities between Australia and Southern Africa, that's because both continents came from Gondwana and shared many biotic elements from that history. But where we find categorical differences, as we do in the case of the Eucalypts, we tend to put that down to a historical accident. In other words, we say that you know, the shared history in Gondwana has no bearing on it, and just because of the vagaries of mutation and accidents of geographical and evolutionary history, it's not all that surprising that the two continents took such radically different evolutionary directions, and we wound up with what are really categorically different scenarios in terms of vegetation. But the idea that we'd like to leave in your minds in doubt of this explanation along the lines of accidents is that there are quite a few members of that same family, the Myrtaceae, present in the various nooks and corners of the Southern African vegetation. And the more you look at these, the more you realize that they do contain, as it were, the seeds of Eucalyptus, in the sense that some of them have some convergences in their leaves, some have some convergences in their flowers, some have convergences in their seed capsules. And if you put all of these adaptive features together in a single plant in Southern Africa, you might have a fairly convincing counterpart for Eucalypts. But what's odd about the Myrtaceae in Southern Africa, which are fairly diverse, is that they never come together in the sense of any one plant combining these various Eucalypt-like adaptations. And that strikes us as odd because it's not that easy to believe in the phylogenetic limitations in the Southern African flora that are necessary to believe that the absence of a eucalypt is altogether accidental. So we're not very happy with the whole idea that you can explain away the absence of eucalypt-like plants in Southern Africa as a biological accident. And we'd prefer to keep looking at the BioEdge for adaptive reasons, for reasons why, improbably enough, there's nowhere in the whole ecological spectrum of Southern African situations that is actually suitable for any form that resembles a eucalypt, whether a small shrub with multi-stems or a medium-sized tall shrub or low tree, or indeed an extremely tall pyrophilic tree. So the question we'd like to leave with you is it possible that this enormous categorical biotic difference between the continents is ultimately an ecological adaptive phenomenon, which means that there's an environmental cause that has produced the biological effect as opposed to just an accident. So with that thought, we look forward to seeing you next time for another item here at the BioEdge. Bye.